Right.
Yeah.
Quality of life. Would you like some quality of life, Matt?
I would absolutely adore some quality of life changes in my video game.
And would you like there to be quality of life on launch or later after you don't necessarily feel like playing the game as much anymore?
Well, I mean, if I were at Blizzard, I know which one I'd pick. Oh Christ, yeah. So I think you've got us off to a real good start there. But fundamentally, the story here is account-wide rep in Venari.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, obviously I know why to do it, but why in April?
Yeah, why in April? It's months and months and months after Shadowlands comes out. I am sure there are some people who have done Venari rep on multiple characters and maybe don't feel great right now. And maybe the fact that those people have went and done that already is why Blizzard are doing it now. Because it's very weird. It's like they consistently launch World of Warcraft with as little quality of life as they can get away with. And then it's like they monitor player behavior and they sort of work out what quality of life players would appreciate after that point.
Yeah.
Which is odd to me. But you do wonder then, like, players obviously appreciate this.
Yeah.
Now, there's a game design problem where players often will, you know, if you in a game have a currency and, you know, players can enter a cheat code to get more of that currency, they will, and then they'll ruin the game for themselves. And yes, people can ruin a game for themselves if you let them. So you've got to do that stuff right. And, you know, a lot of people would say, wow, that's very, you know, presumptuous or whatever. But, like, no, we all know that times we've used a cheat code to cheese out of a game and then it's robbed us of the achievement. So it is a bit of a weird situation with Blizzard where the sorts of things that people want to be account-wide or to have accelerated progress on alts are, I mean, fairly obvious. And they consistently do not do them at patch launch.
No.
A great example of this, of course, is patch 8.3. Because if patch 8.3 had have launched the way that it ended up after Blizzard triaged the semi-disaster that was its launch, then it would have been a better patch.
Massively.
And I would have engaged with the corruption system. Well, I would have engaged with the corruption system.
High praise, like.
Yeah, and maybe I would have had reasons to have cared about the world content that they put there. You know, that could have actually happened. But no, they just waited so long. And maybe it's the sort of thing where they did not see the issues of corruption coming, and then they did those changes and fixes as a, you know, as like a triage, as a response to that.
Yeah.
Which I guess it might be something like that. But yeah, as we look at this, it's like, I always come back to Mists of Pandaria. I mean, often that will happen anyway for people who are talking about WoW stuff, but Mists of Pandaria solved this really well from launch in a way that would get people playing the game more. And that was, because I think this was, when was it at launch? The VP and rep boosts.
The extra ones for alts?
Yeah.
I feel like that was in at launch, but I can't remember. Because I remember the first time I hit Exalted on a rep, I was able to buy the book right away, but I don't know if that was in the launch patch or if that was later. I can't remember.
Same, yeah, because I played MOP, but I actually properly stuck into it with the 0.1 patch. It was like around when that came out. But the point here is what happened in Mists of Pandaria was if you'd cap out your Valor, you would get a buff. And that buff, I believe, would give you 50%, or was it 100% more Valor? It was either 50 or 100%, but it would basically give you more Valor in your alts. So, and then the other thing for Reputation was, I think if you hit Revered or Exalted, whichever one it was, you could buy a Bind an Account Reputation book.
Exalted, I believe.
Exalted, cool. You then, for some reason I remember using those at Revered, but I might just be confusing myself.
Maybe.
But the point was, you would use that book, and you would get like double rep on your alts. And I think that worked really, really, really well. Because when you're doing it on your main, you're doing that stuff because you're like, cool, I want reputation. I want, you want your rep, you want your VP. So that's good stuff that you know you want in the game, you want to do, you're motivated. But then you also have the hidden thing of, also, oh, I know that whenever I cap VP in this character, which I want to do, it's going to make it nicer in my alts. And then, once you've got that done, and you think about playing your alts, you're like, oh, cool, I'll get double rep with that faction. So let's go play the game more.
Yeah, you're incentivized to play the game.
Yeah, you're actually incentivized to play the game, versus the current way they design World of Warcraft, which is one where you're incentivized not to play the game. And that seems like a bit of a strange thing to me, but I just have to think about my own personal experience dealing with multiple Blizzard systems. Like for artifact power, for AP, you're fucking stupid if you grind it up in a given week. It's a stupid waste of time because Blizzard have designed it that way. What would make way more sense is to, wait until 2 weeks of artifact knowledge kick in, and suddenly the efficiency of your time spent is humongously more impactful. And then that means that you're disincentivized from doing anything in the here and now because it will be more efficient later. All you need is the, bravery to say, or whatever, that, oh, I actually don't need those artifact power levels right now. Because even getting those right now would, in that case, mean you grinding against diminishing returns that Blizzard have put in to throttle your progress. And so that's how they did it in that expansion. And that basically meant it was so gameable that you could consistently play Legion and BFA wrong and completely mess up the time efficiency of what you're doing. It was such a wonky way to design the game. When in Mists of Pandaria, it was like, oh yeah, VP, rep, cool, got them both. Now I have a buff on my alts. I'm going to go play my alts. Which, funny enough, the first expansion where I started seriously playing alts was Mists of Pandaria, and it felt good.
Yeah, don't forget you also had, and this is kind of a side point for that, but you also had the bonus rep thing for your daily dungeon on each of those. So, you chose which rep you want to focus on. So you have all these compounding factors of you go to a dungeon, you've got your double rep, you've got your extra VP through all that stuff. It was really, it was the kind of thing where they fed you a little carrot for coming onto your alt instead of laying out a big path and going, there, don't you want to run and frolic free on your alt? You're like, no, I've already done this, please. It's really awkward because the entire time, obviously, because while I'm sitting here and Michael's talking, I try to construct basically visual analogies somehow that just happens in my head. But the entire time I was thinking, what's it like? I've enjoyed this too much. It's almost like, the Takeshi's Castle game where it's all of the things you have to find the right door that actually opens. Yes. It isn't just wood. It's like that. It's like everyone who's playing the game is trying to crowd into this one entrance, or there's just a big wall that the grinders are grinding through. They're mining away at this wall, chipping away at it, and they create a little hole. And then, okay, right, we can get through. The people at the front of the pack can get through. But as soon as they're through for a small period of time, Blizzard can just take away the wall.
Yeah, and then we just saunter on through with zero effort.
Yeah, so it's it kind of works because all of those people are, playing the game, they're doing the grinding, which is nothing to do with if they're enjoying it. They're doing it because they feel they have to, or because it's, they want to, but maybe not for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So it's this thing where you can understand the wall has to be there or something will go wrong, but it just feels so overt to me, or it's so obvious that they're just okay, everyone who could be bothered grinding for an IREP is now done. We'll just turn it on for everyone else. You're that's when it's been done expansion after expansion, it just feels so unfair to anyone who's playing. And if you get that pattern in your head, you log into a patch and like you say, you're just nah. Why would I do this when I can just wait?
Yes, I have been trained as a player to do the bare minimum on my main of, those little side things, because I've consistently known that Blizzard are going to either, nerf the hell out of it or make it such that it is a more fun experience. Imagine putting loads of effort into getting corruption gear on your alts in 8.3 at launch. You would feel so stupid when the proper system comes out. And then for the people who spent all of that time in the maw on their alts, trying to get this stuff.
Yeah.
And now they may as well not have, right? And it's that thing where it's even with the renown system, the way that renown catch up works. I was sitting there being well, okay, if I actually look at this renown, there's really not that much in terms of rewards. right, past the campaign and the player power. And I just kind of realized, yeah, well, I'll get renown anyway while I raid. Doesn't matter too much. As long as I can still do good DPS, then fair enough.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, it's just that they just design these things in a really weird way.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty important distinction to be made, I think, because obviously what we're saying here can be very easily taken as, well, just don't play the game because you'll be stronger later on, or it won't matter in X amount of time. And I think that can come across as like, well, what's the point in playing the game at all? But I think it comes down to the fact that it's basically, they give you so many chores that feel like chores to do that you don't have to. It's very different if you want to.
Yes.
Because if you know the system's going to change, I mean, it's kind of like gearing in itself, where what's the point of gearing in 9.0 when 9.1 will inevitably have a catch-up? Because you want to play the game during 9.0.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because that's like the core gameplay loop. That's what you actually want to do. You want to get that progression. But whenever it's just a chore that you feel like you have to do, then that's when the kind of, well, I mean, it's, I'm trying to think of a real chore example.
Oh,
it's kind of like,
I get the point, though.
Why would I shovel snow when the sun's going to be out tomorrow or next week or next month and melt it away? That's the kind of thing it feels like, as opposed to, but people who have to, this is a good analogy now, because people who have to drive that day will go and shovel the snow. But people who don't will just go, that's let it melt.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It's just that weird thing of, I wish they would consider more of these things up front. To really prioritize that like launch experience and making that great, and not making us feel like we're sitting there waiting to see what's going to happen with these systems and how they're going to change. Where I think some of the only people who really dive into that stuff super hard are the people who, to your analogy, like the drivers and the cars. Yeah. The Mythic Raiders, the Mythic Plus key pushers, who are really going to try to get all the power they can on all of the alts that they need for all of the different team comps that they could be a part of. Whereas for a bunch of us who are just like, I want to raid heroic, get curve, hang out with people, shoot the shit in some PvP, nothing too serious, but just like a pretty average and enjoyable World of Warcraft experience. To a bunch of us, we kind of look at all those systems like, okay, so there's not that much power that I get from actually engaging with it, and I know it's going to be nerfed to shit anyway, so, where I just think that the Mists of Pandaria solution was a really elegant one that actually encouraged me to play the game more, and I know it worked.
Yeah.
So there's probably something to think about there from Blizzard. Not that this one will matter too much, because, I mean, Stygia is sort of being retired in some way. Yeah. All this stuff's going to be different. I find it hard to imagine that your Venari rep will even matter. But I guess now you can buy sockets on your alts without doing actual work.
Yeah, I think if I had like a sort of general conclusion for how this could be solved, as opposed to just sort of talking around it, I think it's fundamentally a case of decide what's a chore and don't make the game significantly worse for players who want to play your game, and then scale it down to be better later on. Try to figure out why you have to do this, and then try to work around it in future. I think that's kind of the...
Yeah, there's someone here, Razul, in chat, who says, exact reason I am not doing anima grind at all. For me, personally, yes. I know that anima will almost certainly be more plentiful and in a way that's more enjoyable to earn once the Maw revamp happens. So I'm going to wait in anima. I can wait for those cosmetics. I do want them. And I know that if it felt like a reasonable and fun thing to attain at launch, I would have done a lot more gameplay, but it didn't, and I, based on the past, know that Blizzard are going to do something about that in the next patch that they do that's going to be responding to the pitfalls of the previous patch. It's just like that kind of treadmill.
The cycle continues.
Yeah, it's the treadmill of, I guess, Blizzard it's almost as if they don't preemptively think about the player experience, because they're so focused on solving some problems, problems like in an academic sense, and putting the game together. There's a bunch of obvious stuff like this where, it's weird. And I guess it's that thing too, it's a reputation, so you normally wouldn't expect it to be account-wide, but it's not really a reputation. It's actually progress down an unlock tree.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a bit odd with Venari herself, particularly. That's most of that.
Yeah,
I would just really like it if they'd be a bit more okay with doing this stuff at launch, because I think for a lot of people, if this stuff was here at launch, and some of the other systems, like what happened with Mists of Pandaria, if that was there at launch, then I think they would actually be more willing to play their alts, and I think that would be great for Blizzard's gameplay, stats, stuff like that. So
yeah, it's I think the difference is try to incentivize people to play the game as opposed to making them, I think, is kind of fundamentally it. I'm sure there's a better way to explain the general concept I'm thinking about here, but it is just like try to remove the barriers to playing by incentivizing instead of actually having those barriers there in the first place. Like, why did they? I mean, obviously the point is they kind of didn't stop to think about this because they're too busy with everything else they're trying to do at the same time. But it's like a simple question of, will this thing stop people from playing alts? Like, will this annoy players more than it'll drive up game time from certain ones? All right, maybe we should look at this a second time and think about it, as opposed to this like sliding scale of QOL changes where it's like, deliver the best version of your game and then see what happens, instead of delivering a kind of almost neutered version that feels kind of annoying and blocky in places and then fix it over time.
Yeah.
But obviously
it's almost like they need somebody whose job title is like Chief of Player Experience.
Yeah.
And their job is just to go in and be like, if I was a player, this would piss me off, this would piss... And I'm sure the devs do that themselves to a degree. It's just, if they do that, then why do we not see that in-game more readily?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I'd say for Shadowlands, it's because they had to throw it together really quickly at the end. I mean, if you were on beta, which obviously most people weren't, but if you were on beta, you would know that they announced the Maw at that that event they did. It was like a weird pseudo event in, was it June-ish?
I think it was June.
It's where we did the Ian interview, and they announced the Maw. It came into the game. A bunch of us went there. We were like, oh, okay, I can see what they're doing. This could be cool. And then they did absolutely nothing to it for ages.
Yeah.
And then they did a weird soft revamp of the Maw. Like right before the expansion came out, and then right before the expansion came out, they also threw in Threads of Fate. It's like so many last minute things happened that I think, Shadowlands just didn't come out as good as it could have.
Yeah, I think that's fundamentally it. Just they didn't have the time to think of this stuff ahead of time. But obviously with this one in particular, it's a trend. It's a trend we'd like to see very much stopped. Please, thank you.
Yes. I think compiling some sort of list of trends we would like to see change or stop would be a interesting thing to do at some point in time.